Hey guys, so I'm making this is sort of a follow-up video on the patch notes because I like you saw in the patch notes. This was literally from 3 days ago. Like so the patch been like 2 3 days. I've liked pretty much everything in this patch. I think this is a huge step in the right direction for League to go back to skill-based play instead of just like 1 to 2 hour power spikes, non-stop aggression, non-stop ganks, and they literally did like so many good changes. Yet everyone is not really happy with it. And it makes me a bit weirded out because these changes is what everyone's been asking for years. And like me, I've been asking for it. And if you go back at my videos, I've been pretty critical over the state of the game and the balance of this game. And and especially if you like follow my Twitter or something, I always complain about these changes. I'm like, more damage, more damage. Instead of buffing, just give the lower end more damage. And I just don't agree with those changes. And the whole skin balance team. And I mean, there's even more to talk about because they did hotfix nerfs to for no reason. Like, I'll get into that, guys. So Uh, I want to just talk about various topics I've been seeing on like the boards and stuff, and it's just like in mass. Like it's gotten to the point where it's being spammed, and it just makes me a bit like worried that like people are gonna complain so much that they're gonna revert this game and just turn into Earth mode again. So the first thing I want to talk about, like no one's really talking about aftershock at all, but probably because no one plays aftershock tanks because they still think tanks are bad, which is not true at all. And people are talking about Conquer a little bit, but before I get into those, we're gonna go talk about the big thing everyone's talking about is support items. Everyone's complaining, and this is one thing I sort of like skimmed over because I'm not a support player. Like I was mostly caring about like like the the initial changes, like like the no damage, no healing aspect of it. The big change that people do not like. Let's go to a relic. Let's find a So with relic shield, for instance, uh, instead of giving HP when it doesn't say removed. Well, it doesn't heal you anymore. It just gives gold. And people like with this item, they're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna get poked out of lane." But the thing they're forgetting is that the spell thief item, where the hell, like, where is this? Spell thief item, right? Call it? But first of all, they lower the AP a little bit on this. Less mana regen, so you should be taking less poke damage. And next year, no mana regen, less CDR, so less poke, less damage, but more tankiness. Good. That's good for gameplay. It's good for outplay. It's good to give. Like this is literally they nerf damage and spamability of like ults and everything. This is literally means hey, you get to have more room to outplay. You get to be tanky. Like they get to be tanky, but it also gives room for the opponent to actually react. And right here too, no mana gen, no CDR, and the big thing is when you attack someone, uh, you're not gonna do the bonus damage, and this bonus damage was making some champions do like Brand or Morgana do more damage than like or even Zyra, like they would just instantly do a huge chunk of damage and just walk away. And instead of having that, we now have the ability power, which rewards using more spells instead of just one spell and just walking away. But you have to be more decisive because don't have that mana regen anymore, and you also don't have the CDR. And it it just makes you have to commit more into something instead of just like poke someone down and then they can't do anything, so they run away and you get the tower. This is trying to encourage an actual fight to happen instead of someone just getting just out poked. And and the big thing about these items, like all these items have, is you also don't get gold anymore once it's upgraded to the highest tier. And people seem to be very outraged, like, oh, Now I can't do anything as a support. But not really, because instead of like, because the thing is that like people are like, oh well, there's also a minion penalty in this, which is like not that complicated, but essentially it means that let's say you are a brand support or a Morgana Zyra support, and you're holding off minions. It would get to the point where, or even pushing a lane, like even mid game, early game, alone for whatever reason, which is hard to do anyway because you have less mana regen and stuff. If you were to do that constantly and your carries and weren't like going there to clear themselves, it means that you won't get. I believe that gold like severely reduced. I believe, and I'm not sure about how much, but a lot apparently. And the thing is that I like that because it's like, what's the name of the role? Support. I don't think support should have nuke levels of damage unless they are fed, aka they are playing with their team and supporting them. And so this change literally makes it so you can get that unique first item pick faster. And so, because you only need to spend the 400 gold for the initial item, so that other 1400 gold, I believe it is, I believe it's 1400, not 1300, it's 1400, goes to an item. And that item is going to probably, maybe even smaller items, like you maybe have to get some the rejuvenation pendants, or you have to get the fairy charms. And that's pretty cool that now instead of just buying ruby crystal, it's now, oh, I have to buy these very small items and keep them and build them into something eventually. And I think that type of decision making and building is good for the game instead of just getting raw stats, because you're essentially getting mana regen for free, but now you have to invest into a resource if you want that. Like, you can still build damage, but the thing is that you're gonna run out of mana really fast, and you're not gonna have, what was that? You're not gonna have CDR unless you invest in it, which is really good. Like, th- it's sort of what I've been arguing about, like how this game's sort of playing itself, and like these two things being removed, it makes it so these roles aren't just like Earth mode. Like, because the one thing I was always complaining about was this game's turning into Earth. Like, maybe that's why people like Earth. Like, people like Earth. Okay, I don't care about the mode, but people like Earth. But since they played it so much and love it, they were sort of like meshing Summer's Rift, the 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 DNA of Summer's Rift with being a strategy type game, and Earth, which is just a fun mode, and meshing them together in their mind, where they thought this was like okay. But it's a bit weird because, again, I see people complain every day before about too much damage, free CR, free mana. You don't run out of mana. Why do champions even have mana? You don't run out of mana, and but now they do. And I just, and especially with like the relic shield change, uh this, like, oh, why weren't we seeing Yumi, Sona, uh Tarek even, we saw some Alistar, uh and why weren't we seeing like Soraka and Nami more? Because why would you play a champion who has to play in the back line and not be a big initiator, which is like usually a sacrificial lamb at that point, when that tanky initiator had the ability to heal you? Like how many times I played AD carry a fair amount, and I remember how many times you would harass the heck out of like a Thresh and be like, oh, he only has a shield, he can't get his HP back. Oh wait, relic shields exist, and all of a sudden he's back to full HP or pretty close to it. And you should only feel like that when you're versing a lane like Sona or Nami, where they have that long-term sustain. And I feel like Relic Shield was taking away from the identity of these champions and making them not picked. And people were like, "Man, I miss playing." Like, people again complain all the time. I see it about Channers are dead. What happened to the support role? Well, they're bringing back what support was supposed to be, not a, oh, I have as much gold as a my jungler or middle laner or whatever. I like, now it's, you get to that point faster of getting that one or two items, and you have to make plays with your team. You have to play with your team. There's not, oh, I'm just gonna deal assassinate people as support. You have to play with your team. You get gold by killing those wards. You get gold by getting kills and assists. It's like I'm not a big fan of forcing playstyles and forcing like aggression, but this is like it's forcing it in a way where it doesn't feel forced, where it's like healthy gameplay, you know? Because I feel like when you try to force it in the way they were before, it makes people play too safe because you're giving them too many options, you know? And the next big thing I want to talk about is the dragons. People are complaining about the dragons, and that really perplexes me. In all honesty, I gotta go scroll. Guys, enjoy the scroll. Like I'm old fashioned. Okay, so the dragons are interesting because people they're saying mostly out of context arguments. They're like, "Oh, I like the old dragons because they made room for comeback, but now it isn't." Well, there is a comeback potential because the first dragon, in particularly the or of Infernal and Earth, have been nerfed or changed with like Infernal used to have 10% AP in AD. Now it's only 5%. That is a huge nerf. That is literally a 50% nerf. And that means that first Infernal isn't going to be instant, oh, game over, we lose. Sorry, guys, I just ate. So I had to keep that in there. So it's literally, it got nerfed in half. And it was always weird because a lot of times, and, because I wear, not wear, I watch a decent, guys, excuse me. I, I watch a decent amount of like, like a little pro play. Like I watch like the finals and stuff. And it was always weird seeing like the team that has 4 to 5 dragons is actually like somewhat losing. And I think these dragon changes are good because first off, the Inferno got nerfed. Yes, that's great. The Earth Dragon, instead of just the Earth Dragon was weird because it gave you true damage to towers and Baron, especially the first one, 16% true damage was it was insane for objectives. It was good on for some comps. It was either bad, good, or OP. Because if you had like a Karthus, Kaisa, I don't know, Yasuo comp, you would just instantly blow up Baron. And it's like, was that really fun? Was that really engaging? Did you really feel outplayed? And it was like, it was really like bad. Like it was like RNG, but in a bad way. And now what does it give? It gives resistances and good. If you ever see HP or resistances to anything, that is great because that just means more room for outplay, more room. Like it's not damage; it's room to do something for both ends. And the big thing, like for instance, like the air dragon, it got changed from movement speed per dragon to CDR and ult, and I guess that sort of matters, but it's like it depends on the champion. So that one's a bit of a weird one. You get the movement speed after the Dragon Soul, and the Ocean. It was only a 1% nerf, but I think the big thing to take from Ocean, which is actually a pretty since they nerfed the mana regen, Ocean now doesn't give you the mana regen anymore. It only gives HP. And that just means less Earth type gameplay. Because, like, with Hecarim, for instance, if you had one ocean dragon, that was like the dragon to get because that just meant that you could spam your E and travel. Like you were able to hyper farm and hyper carry if you got one ocean dragon. But now since you don't have it anymore, you have to be more cautious with it. And I think the one thing people also like this is also going back into supports is maybe now people have to go into the mastery of when you kill a champion or assist, you get 20% of your max mana and your mana increases by 100. That mastery is probably the mastery to take for a lot of supports, especially enchanters. Like Yumi already takes that. And that's probably why we're because people are starting to be like, wow, Yumi actually feels pretty good right now. It's probably because enchanters in general got a huge buff. And it's just when I think of supports, I think of enchanters. And I have no issue with a tank support. Or, honestly, maybe I don't have an issue with the assassin supports if since their gold income is actually lowered. We have to see how that plays out. But I just think when you think of support, is the majority should be enchanters. These other picks should be like niche picks for a certain team comp or even strategy. You know, And uh, it's just yeah. When you get the fourth dragon, that's when people are like, "Oh, I don't feel like I can make a comeback." But you let the enemy team get four dragons in a row. So doesn't that team sort of deserve to win if they were playing for that late game? They were doing the objectives, map control, setting up for that dragon a minute prior or whatever it may have been. If you didn't get any of those dragons to delay it or anything, that means you were turtling and just waiting it out and relying on item power spikes instead of actually engaging in the objective base like the objective based gameplay that this game should have. And I think what we're going to see now more is in, instead of having these games where like the game might be over in like 20 minutes or 15 and because they're like 5 10 kills ahead, teams might decide not to close out the game because there's still a risk to lose if you overextend, you get outplayed or something like that, or no, you didn't have that information. So now teams might play safer, making more suspense. But once they get those four dragons, there's just gonna be it's no there's no I'm not even questioning it. Those four dragon buffs are insanely powerful. Every single one's insanely strong. But they only spawn after they spawn after 5 minutes. That's pretty fast. They have less HP. So I think the issue with dragons before was that they didn't want to make them too strong because then it would just make games into a long slugfest. But I think this is a good balance where they the effect's strong enough, like because the effect really blows up after the fourth dragon. The dragons spawn fast enough and they die fast enough, like not too fast, but it's easier to secure them, less risk, so there's more incentive to go for them. That now these games are just gonna. I'll be honest, I'm sort of forgetting what I'm talking about, but but that's just what happens when you do run on sentences, guys. Don't do that. Uh, I just feel like these games are like if the team gets four dragons, essentially, they should be able to close the game. And I think what I was going to talk about was it's like does that team really not deserve to win if you have one or zero dragons or even two and they have four? Like I like that cool effect. Like you can still potentially outplay them, but it's just going to be hard. And I think that's good because now games are going to be closed faster, but in a good way because it was in a strategic way where you were playing around that power. And in some games where it's even and you're actually contesting dragon, it might be 3-3, and whoever gets this next dragon gets the dragon soul. And we might have cool moments like that where it's like super suspenseful. And once that team gets it, it might be like, oh my god, like I think one of the big things though that they might change is that it's sort of rare just because once you have the dragon soul, the game probably should be over. Is the elder dragon buff because the execution. Sorry, guys. Um, I believe the execute like let's go find the elder dragon first. I don't want to say some BS. Yeah, so the big thing that with the Elder Dragon that I sort of agree with is that it's a bit of because Elder Dragon's always been weird about the balance because you don't see it that often. It's hard to balance just because we didn't really see it, but we might see a lot more. So maybe it'll be easier to narrow it down. And so right here, damaging enemy at less than 20% HP causes them to die in Elder Emotion after zero point 0.5 seconds. And the thing with that is that it doesn't scale with dragons because I've seen some posts about how you can have all four dragons, another dragon spawns, and I don't know, say your team wiped and they got it, you just lose the game. And I mean, I understand that they literally said like instead of the dragon being so strong, they want to be strong for all teams. Like I don't have an issue with this, but I just think it's a bit weird that this effect doesn't scale. Like I could even understand if it was like 10% and it went up to 20% and went up by 5% per dragon. So if the team had the dragon soul, it would be at its full power. If the other team had only two dragons, but the other team had a dragon soul, it would be at half power. It would be 15%. And that's a change I would personally look into. Like if I was balancing, I would be like, that's a bit weird. Like that just seems really punishing for us. Is you'd be really hyped and then we misplayed that and then you just lose the game because they got the elder. Um, what else should I talk about, guys? Let me really Yeah, I think we're gonna talk about that. So there's a I don't know what his name is, but there was some guy. I mean, there's some guy, right? Scruffy. He talks about how he wants people to play 50 to 100 games to get a good feeling of like the dragon and the new maps instead of just judging off like the first day or two. And it's only been 3 days. And I don't understand. Like one thing he said right after he tweeted that was, "Oh, we're looking to micro buff, hotfix buff, whatever, Ezreal." And I don't understand why, because if you look at OPGG or like probably any other site, whatever site you fancy, his best rune is Conquer. All his other runes are terrible win rates, absolutely terrible. And I, so it'll take a little bit of time for people to realize, like with Vi, people are not using Conquer, but Conquer has an insane win rate on Vi. Camille, same thing, insane win rate, but no one's using it. And it's like instead of buffing Ezreal, why not wait until people realize that Conquer is good on Ezreal and then maybe buff or nerf Ezreal or to even keep them the same? I I just feel like with this little buff, it's very small, honestly, but it's just I just feel like it's a bit of like because Ezreal's just that pick where you pick him when you get auto-filled AD carry and have no idea how to play AD carry, honestly. So that's probably why, because he has such a huge play rate, player base, because he's just their go-to fill AD carry pick, you know. Um, Omnisone, very interesting rune. Got buff. Again, I'm not quite sure how to judge this rune. This rune I remember is being talked about with I forget what champions, but like certain champions that sort of benefit from different types of like this rune is probably good on champions that are good with various keystones, and I can't name some on the top of my head, but I just think it's a very like a lot of people just think it's dog shit. I think experimental things where anything can happen and has a lot of variety. I do not think you should ever shut that thing down ever. It might because it wouldn't surprise me. This rune ends up being broken for whatever reason. And so the big thing with Sandrian Blade, it got nerfs, guys. And honestly, I'm not that surprised, but I'm more surprised it got a double nerf. Okay, and I honestly like again, I personally feel it was fine. And I literally told Ali a bit after I made the original patch video, or even like yesterday, that the only thing I could see them doing was increasing the gold cost by 100, because you know I think the only real quote unquote issue it might have is it's just really cheap for like the stats it gives in a best case scenario. So when I saw like a goal increase by 100, I sort of understood it. It was fine, but I really don't agree by gutting it with the 20 to 8%. Like this is a huge nerf. Like it makes me a bit hesitant to get it. Like it might be all right, but it'd be such a it's even more of a situational item because like even if you get that best case scenario, you don't really get really rewarded for like one thing like the one thing I don't like is when Riot nerfs late games of champions. I can understand early game nerfs. Like even if they nerfed it by increasing the goal by 100, and let's say that it was 20% to 100%, I could fully understand that. If it was just because 20 to 100% compared to 40 to 100%, it wouldn't be as big of a nerf as it looks, because you don't get the item at level 1. You get those levels first, and so it'd be more like even if you got the item at like level 9 or 10, you wouldn't be losing a whole lot of attack speed. You may be losing like 5 or 6 8% attack speed. But this type of nerf, you're losing that attack speed on top, and maybe a bit more on top of losing the end game attack speed. And it just feels bad when they nerf a late game of a champion and end the early game. So I just think that I really, guys, 3 days, like like even with me, like I might be even quote unquote incorrect, but I really don't think I am because I'm sort of explaining why. Other people are saying, "Oh, it's OP." I really am still sticking with my guns that I still think the item was fine. I could understand a 100 gold nerf. I this is sort of like pushing it, but I could even understand the if they did a 20% to 100% instead of 40 to 100%. But this is literally like they gutted the item. Like it's gonna be very very, you see this, like you would only see this item if like this is a very strong like at this point it's becoming a very strong like solo queue-ish type of item, and maybe even just like only junglers can build this item now. Because like maybe it was being abused by junglers, but if it was, why not only just nerf the base attack speed? Like for instance, like if they were getting the attack speed at level 9, like it was just still too much. Why not just make it like 10% to 100% so that each level like you could lower that, and like you lower that attack speed until you got to high levels where like it wants to be you wanted it to be a strong item. Like I just really feel like they really jumped the gun on this, because like guys, you cannot honestly say that people have played this game enough at this point, or even not. I don't think people honestly analyze items like I do, like this critically. Like guys, add comments. One item, 28 minutes or whatever. Yeah, that's how much I look into things when I think of like the possibilities of the item. And I mean, I don't want to keep lingering on about this. This is pretty much the end of the video. It's just I really think this preseason was great, and I'm gonna be very sad if they end up reverting these changes and just, oh yeah, here's back Earth mode with CDR with cool items. I'm gonna be very disappointed because the whole community has been complaining that this game is trying to no skill, high damage, power spikes, free damage, no running out of mana, and they're getting rid of that, and now people are complaining. And I just think that people need to take a step back and realize that what the game was, because I feel like people forget what League was, because honestly, there's probably a lot of new players that don't even understand like how good this game was back in the day, you know. So, I mean, if you have any type of questions, or like you have a comment like about any of my thoughts on this, especially Sanjo and Blade, you just go leave one in the comments. And I mean, that's really, yeah, I'm not gonna linger on at this point.